8 Steps to Happiness Part 2. Step 2. Occupying oneself with activity or useful knowledge. Among the means of warding off anxieties and the preoccupation of the heart with sorrow is to occupy oneself with one activity or another, or with some useful knowledge, ilm. This is because doing that will distract the heart away from being immersed in its anxieties. It may even help him forget the things that caused him grief and worry, and he may even experience some happiness and become cheerful. This is also something that is common between both the believer and the non-believer. But the believer is different. Because when he occupies himself with the knowledge that he is seeking or giving, or with the good action he is doing, whether it be an act of worship or a worldly act where his intention is to seek strength in worshipping Allah, when he does that, he does it out of his belief in Allah, sincerity and seeking the pleasure of Allah. This in itself has the additional effect of warding off grief, worries and anxieties, by a divine intervention. We have seen many people afflicted with sorrows and permanent anxieties, to the extent of making them very ill. Their only cure was to make them forget the cause of their sorrow and misery, and be preoccupied with their normal activities. The activity to be preoccupied with should be something pleasing to the self, and one that it yearns for. This makes it more effective in achieving the desired goal, and Allah knows best. Section 1. Occupying oneself with the present. Among the things that ward off worry and anxiety is to concern oneself with the affairs of the present, and not to be anxious about the future, nor grieve over the past. This is why the Prophet sought refuge in Allah from anxiety and grief. Bukhari, 1178, Ahmad, 3220, Abu Dawud, 290, Tirmidhi, 5520 and Nasai, 8257 on the authority of Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu anhuma. Grief, huzn, is usually over past events that you can neither bring back nor rectify. Anxiety, ham, is usually fear and concern over what will come in the future. Therefore a person should concentrate his energy and attention in the betterment of his existing events, and his present moments. Focusing on the affairs of the moment is the necessary cause of them being accomplished, and it is what gets rid of grief and anxiety from the heart. When the Prophet asks something from Allah, or guides his community to ask specific thing from Allah, he is exhorting them with seeking help from Allah, and having hope in his favor. At the same time they have to work hard and earnestly for the accomplishment of what they ask to be removed from them. Therefore making dua should go side by side with action. So the slave strives for what will benefit him in his religion and in his worldly life, and he asks his Lord to make him accomplish his need, and he seeks his help in that. As the Prophet said, strive for what will benefit you, and seek the help of Allah, and do not be incapacitated. And if something afflicts you, do not say if I had done such and such would have happened, but say, this is the decree of Allah, he does what he wills. This is because if opens the act of shaitan. Muslim, 42052, Ahmad, 2366, Ibn Majah, 131 on the authority of Abu Hurairah, radiyallahu anhuma. In this narration, the Prophet exhorts us to join between two things. The first is to strive for useful things in all situations, and seek the help, isti'ana, of Allah, and not surrender, adm in qiyad ourselves to powerlessness, because that is from negligence that harms. The second is to surrender events of the past to Allah, and witness in them the decree of Allah and his predestination qada Allah wa qadar. The Prophet defined two categorical matters. The first category are affairs the servant, Fabt has the ability to accomplish totally or partially, or those that he can avoid completely or at least lighten their impact. For this category, the servant should exert his utmost and seek the help of the one he worships, Ma'bud. The second category is those affairs over which the servant has no power. For this, the slave should calm himself, and accept what came to him and surrender to Allah. There is no doubt that complying with this principle is a definite means of achieving happiness and keeping worry and grief away from oneself. Step 3. Remembrance, dhikr and thankfulness, shukr. Among the greatest means, akbar al-asbab, to achieve the expansion of the heart, inshara al-sadr, and its tranquility, tamaniya, is abundant remembrance, akthar min dhikr, of Allah. Remembrance of Allah has a profound effect, dathar ajib, of bringing relief and tranquility to the heart, while removing worry, ham, and grief from it. Allah, the Most High, said, without doubt, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find satisfaction. Arad 13:28. This is because of the great effect, that the remembrance of Allah has over the hearts and the fact that the servant Abd When remembering Allah has hope of receiving a good reward, thawab, and recompense, ajar, from him. Section 1. Thankfulness, shukr. Among the things is to mention the favors and blessings, nima, of Allah on oneself, both the outwardly manifest, zahira, and hidden, batina. There is no doubt that recognition of Allah's favors and blessings, and speaking about them, is a means by which Allah removes grief, ham, and worry, gham, from the heart. And this noble act encourages the servant, to be ever thankful, and such thankfulness reaches the highest level, maratib Allah, even though the servant may be in state of poverty, faqr, sickness, marad, or other forms of tribulations, balaha, that engulf him. When he compares the countless and endless favors of Allah upon him with the trials that befell him, he sees how extremely small they are in comparison with the blessings of Allah granted him with. In fact, trials and tribulations are such that when the servant is afflicted with them, and he observes patience, sabr, contentment, rida, and submission, taslim, in the face of the afflictions and harm he is being tested with, their burden becomes lightened and their pain becomes mild. In addition to that, the servant hopes for the reward that these afflictions will bring if he worships Allah, while he embodies patience, sabr, and contentment, rida, thus, turning the bitterness of observing patience into sweetness, halad. So the sweetness of reward, bolawa jar, causes him to forget the bitterness of the patience, marara sabr. Section 2. Implementing the teachings of the Prophet. Among the most useful methods of acquiring happiness, halawa, is earned by implementing the teachings of the Prophet. In a confirmed narration where he said, "Look to those that are below you, with regards to worldly possessions, and do not look at those that are above you, with regards to worldly possessions. That is more befitting for you not hold the favors and blessings of Allah on you with contempt." Muslim, 4 2275, Ahmad, 2 254, Tirmidhi, 4 666 and Ibn Majah 2 1387 on the authority of Abu Hurairah, radiyallahu anhu. Indeed, if a servant were to put this noble teaching in front of his eyes, he would realize how far he has been exalted and favored over many people. In well-being, afia, and having been exempted from tribulations, in richness, rizq, and what comes with it, so this is true no matter what his situation. If the servant does this, his anxiety will vanish, as well as his grief and worry. And his delight, surur, and joy, far, with the favors and blessings of Allah by which he has been placed above many who are lower than him, will increase. The deeper the servant reflects on the manifest and hidden favors and blessing of Allah, with regards to worldly and religious affairs, the more he sees that his Lord has granted him so much goodness and has distanced him from countless worries and sadness. There is no doubt that all this removes sadness and sorrow and replaces them with delight and happiness. Step 4. Removing whatever produces sadness and seeking means of happiness. Among the means that bring about happiness and remove sorrow and anxiety is attempting to eliminate the things that bring about misery, and seek after those that bring about happiness, surur. This can be achieved by forgetting and discarding any misfortunes that occurred in the past. Obviously he has no power to return to them. And he recognizes that occupying the mind in these matters is in vain. In fact, it is stupidity, amak, bordering on lunacy, janoon. This means he has to detach his heart, qalb, away from thinking tafakkur about the past and keep striving to preserve his heart, not fearing things he imagines for the future. He must accept the realization that everything taking place in the future, whether good or evil, ideal or flawed, are from the unknown matters that alone rest in the hands of the Almighty, the Wise. A person should only be concerned with cultivating goodness and refusing to adopt pathways leading to harm in the future. He must know that turning his mind away from negative thoughts and surrendering to Allah's all-encompassing knowledge and wisdom, his heart will find serenity and temperate his condition that in turn will improve his mental well-being too. Section 1. Using prophetic supplications. Among the most beneficial acts in addressing hope of one's future is using supplications taught the Prophet. Allahumma asli li dini aladi uwa isma tamri wa asli li dunya ya aladi fihi mashi wa asli li akirati aladi fi amadi waj al hayatazi yadatan li fi kulli khairi waj al mada. Rayatan li min kulli shar. O Allah, make me adhere properly to my religion, on which all my affairs depend. Make this world good for me, in which is my livelihood. Make my hereafter good for me, in which is my ultimate destiny. Make my life increase in every good thing, and make my death a respite from every evil. When one is worried about what may happen in the future, the following dua is very beneficial, and it is reported on the authority of Abu Hurairah, radiyallahu anhu. Muslim, number 2720. And he also taught us the following supplication. Allahumma ramataka arju falatakilni ila nafsi tarfat. Ain wasli li shanikillahu la ilaha illa anta. O Allah, for your mercy I hope, so do not leave me in charge of my affairs even for the blink of an eye, rectify all my affairs. There is no God except you. Another of the beneficial du'as which the Messenger of Allah taught us is the one he told us about when he said, the dua of the person who is in distress is, Abu Dawood in his Sunan number 5090 and Al-Albani authenticated it in Sahih al-Jami number 3388 and in Sahih Abi Dawood number 4246. If the servant, Abd, says this dua, which entails seeking the betterment, sila, of his future both in terms of his religion and his worldly affairs. If he says that with a mindful heart, qalb hadir, and a true and sincere intention, niwa sadika, coupled with an earnest struggle I had to achieve it, then Allah will grant what he asks for. Hopes raja, in and endeavors to accomplish. Thus, his worry ham, will change to happiness, farb, and delight surer.